The first story we'll talk about is the dumpster fire that is Grand Theft Auto Remaster. Is that what it's calling it? The trilogy.
I don't know. The trilogy remastered, the definitive edition, number 2, Electric Boogaloo. We're gonna patch this 1,000 times.
I don't
like it's Cyberpunk.
feel like remaster or definitive edition is just a.
I mean, it might have been a remaster, but it was a remaster of a mobile port, which is basically like saying, "Here's this shiny turd, and we just made it slightly shinier."
The Grand Theft Auto, the re-disaster.
There are legit instances where the PS2 version runs better than some things on console. Think about that for a second. You want to talk about dumpster fire? I think dumpster fire is being kind.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this. So this is coming from Respawn Station from Shri Kendula. They write Grand Theft Auto the trilogy is being review bombed after a rough launch. So Grand Theft Auto the trilogy was released earlier this week on PlayStation 5, Xbox, or PlayStation 4, Xbox, basically all the systems, via Rockstar launcher, but the game is off to a rough start. The collection, which includes remastered versions of Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, turns out not to be the definitive edition after players across all platforms are reporting numerous problems. This has led players to take the Metacritic to review bomb the game. At the time of writing this article, Grand Theft Auto Trilogy sits at a 0.9 user score with nearly 1.5 or 1.5 thousand votes, 1,500 votes. At the score, and the score did dip below 0.5 earlier yesterday, briefly making the collection the lowest rated game on the site. This brings us to the question: what makes the definitive edition so bad? Well, first, there's the performance problems. Players across all consoles have been reporting low frame rates, with the game reportedly hitting as low as 20 frames per second on Nintendo Switch. Players on the GTA subreddit have decided to share side-by-side comparisons of the original games and their remaster counterparts, and they're pretty bad. That's just me editorializing. You should be cautious, though, as there are a lot of doctored images making rounds that are just trying to fuel the fire. That being said, gameplay footage of the rain in San Andreas does highlight how difficult it is to play the game in its current state. Additionally, the Rockstar gamed launcher was down on launch day, and after the launcher was back up, the definitive edition was unavailable to play or purchase due to files that were unintentionally added and needed to be removed. And this could be due like licensing. The music hasn't been there as well. And then Rockstar did acknowledge in a tweet on November 14th saying Grand Theft Auto the Trilogy, the definitive edition, is again available through the Rockstar game launchers for play and purchase. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and are working to improve and update overall performance as we move forward. Adam, first question, like what do you make of, the definitive edition?
It's about 24 months way too early into our hands. That's probably the best way of looking at it. It is literally a giant steaming bowl of crap. There's no better way. Well, I guess there's much more expletive ways to talk about it, but it is an absolute disaster. Like, it runs like the performance mode compared to the fidelity mode. Think about this for a second too. A remaster of a PlayStation 2 game has a performance and a fidelity mode. Mm-hmm. Why don't we just have one? It's a PS2 game.
Yeah.
It's not like they've rebuilt it like it was freaking Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're talking about a basically like modified version of the PS2 game that people online have been doing forever and got taken down from stores, and in some cases going to court with Take-Two over it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Rockstar basically just destroyed their entire mod scene to put out a garbage collection of these 3 games and charged $60 for it, when it's probably not even worth $5 on mobile.
No, I think the problem is that, like, there's 2 things for this. One, I don't even think this should have been a remaster. Like, no offense, a PS2 game does not warrant a remaster. Like, a PS2 game, you almost need to do a remake. Like, and the people are saying this. It's not just that it doesn't perform well, but this is, like I've said it several times, this is an iterative industry where the games improve. What we do improves. Like, we're always building on what was done before. And so with something like GTA 3, like, it's it's not archaic, but it has a lot of hiccups that, of that time were acceptable, but now don't really fly. And so I think just putting a new coat of paint on that game does it a disservice. And I think what it really needs is, I think like it did need a genuine remake.
Or at the
And
very
so
least, just take the base game and just upscale it and make it 60 frames. Who cares about adding a new color palette to it? Who cares about adding any sort of extra stuff? Just make it run at 60 frames and just make it work on like 4K TVs.
yeah,
So it doesn't look like polygonal crap. That's all you
yeah,
had to do. And they decided to not do that, but then take a mobile port of the game, try to put that in Unreal 4, and then somehow make that work. And it ended up being a disaster.
yeah. And it's unfortunate, like, because what this does is this does tarnishes Rockstar's reputation, who, to be honest, had a pretty stellar one. And I feel like they've kind of shot themselves in the foot. And they're not the first studio to do that, but I think studios need to kind of, like, the idea that Rockstar comes out and says, like, we're working to improve and update the overall performance. You couldn't have been surprised that this is what the performance looks like, and you chose to release it.
Oh, and you sit there and you think, like, because, we've had enough time now being in this age of social media to understand really what goes on in the industry. You know that there is no way that QA testing in this did not sit there and be like, guys, this is really bad. Like, really bad. You think nobody in QA thought that the rain that, like I said, looks like legit Spider-Man webbing flowing into the ground, that none of them said, hey guys, visibility's kind of shit with this rain. Can we maybe fix that? Or, hey guys, I think the fans are going to think the way that we change the body forms and the facial expressions, they're not going to like it because it kind of looks like dog shit. Like, you look at the original game, and I'm talking PS2, I'm not talking like the Xbox, I'm talking full-on original. They look perfectly serviceable now. If you had just put a 60-frame 1080p coat of paint on it, we probably would have said, that's fine. It runs well.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here being like, you couldn't even do that right.
Yep.
We've said it many times with different games on this show. This is the easiest layup Rockstar ever had to make. Just redo the games, 60 frames per second, just a bit of upscaling. You don't have to go crazy. Like, is it nice that they did things like water reflections, and making the sky look prettier and things like that? Sure, like, it's nice to see lighting improving in a game that's 20 years old, but it didn't need it. People more just remember the game. They weren't really looking for it to look like super amazing. And if it was going to be super amazing, then you just remake it. There's no point in putting so much work in a remaster, because realistically no one gives a shit. They just want to play the game that they grew up with.
And that's the thing that I'm thinking, is that, like, these games were already available, through, like, backwards compatibility.
Yeah, because they were backwards compatible on PS4.
Yeah, and they were on the system, like, they were on the storefronts too. Like, they got pulled down so that they can sell these. And it's, if people wanted to play them, they were there. So unless you're bringing something to the table that is new, that is improved, why? Like, the people who want to play it can play it. Like, there's no gatekeeping, there's no barrier to entry that stops me if I want to go pick up Vice City from doing that.
And in all honesty, like, what they chose for their kind of new look for this game, it almost feels like I'm playing Simpsons Hit and Run with the way that the graphics kind of look. It looks like I'm playing like a 3D fleshed out like Simpsons Hit and Run without like the Simpsons kind of like cartoonish style. It's very weird how it looks, because it doesn't look like they give it a realistic coat of paint, but it also doesn't look like the original game either. So it just looks like this, almost like a Chinese knockoff, if that makes any sense.
Yep. No, I know what you mean. Like, it's hard because I feel like they lost like their art style. So.
Well, because you remember with the original GTA 3, it had like this blue filter to it. Now it's completely gone, and it kind of just takes away, I guess, some of the charm of it. Now it just looks like every other game out there. It looks like a shitty sandbox game on Steam that you would find for $10.
Sorry. No, I completely agree. Sorry, I had something come up on my phone. I just had to address that.
You gotta have the on-air symbol, man. We're live, pal.
No, I totally hear you. Now the second thing I want to talk about, like this review bombing, like, is that, I don't know. Like, I get that this is a crappy situation. I get that Rockstar should not Rockstar should not be rewarded for this kind of, but like, I don't know. Review bombing to me does it accomplish anything?
I mean, in the end, no, because it's still going to exist on the store. They're still going to make their money. You know, we do this every single time with stuff, but they always end up turning a profit anyway. I mean, if it does anything, it's such a minor number that it doesn't really put a dent in things, because most of the people, and if I'm wrong on this, but most of the people that review bomb were never planning on buying it anyway. They're just doing it because it's something that they can put on their status on Twitter to be like, hey, look at me, I did my part, fuck Rockstar. And we're all like, okay. But then the same person's either going to turn around and keep playing GTA 5 and spend money on shark cards, or, you know, the next time something else happens with Rockstar, they'll still defend them to the bone, or you know, quite frankly, they'll do what they always do, which is go back to whatever they're playing until the next big controversy comes up, and then they'll act like they give a shit.
Yeah, like it costs nothing. There's no difficulty in review bombing a game, and like Rockstar doesn't care. They got their money. Like, the amount of people that are going to be dissuaded from it, I don't know. Maybe it makes a news article that, you know, then gets people to say, "Oh, this game is bad." But for me, like, I don't think it accomplishes much. And like, it's easy. It's easy to review bomb something. It costs no effort. But what's really challenging, and if you really want to stick it to Rockstars, when GTA 6 gets announced, when, you know, Red Dead 3 gets announced, whatever, that's when you need to sort of say, no, like, I'm not going to, you know, support this. I'm going to, like, you need to prove yourself again. But I mean,
I disagree, because if the game is really, really good, you do support it. It's just the problem is the actual method to do things is just impossible, because that would require people to do nothing. Because if you really want to put a stance, you don't talk about it. You just if you ever want to stick it to a company, you make them obsolete. You don't make them matter at all, because as they always say, any PR is good PR. It gets the game's name out there. And in the case of this game, the only way that it was ever going to be taken seriously that something was wrong is if nobody was buying it and nobody was talking about it. I mean, the journalists are going to report on it being bad because that's what they do. But once literally every bit of social media is just churning up and down about stuff, you lose. Because now they've won. They got their PR win. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. So I don't think either review bombing does anything. I don't think taking it out on another game, unless it's shit too. But, you know, I don't think, like, unless we're talking pre-orders, fine. Don't pre-order the game. Don't give them their money right away. Wait for it. But if the game is 9 or 10, like if Red Dead 3 is 9 or 10 out of 10 again, then buy the fucking game. Go enjoy it. You shouldn't have to stand, you don't have to stand by a moral that really isn't going to do anything much in a corporate structure, just so that you, because it only hurts you if it's a really good game and you don't get to enjoy it. But realistically, if it matters that much, don't talk about it. Don't make any videos about it. It's already out, guys. Everybody knows that it's bad. So now shut up about it. And that'll be the real message to Rockstar, is that we've already stopped caring about their game and no one's buying.
You see the irony though of what we're saying right now, right?
What? That we're complaining about it now, but all I'm saying now is it's done. So you know, I don't want to see, like, especially in a couple of weeks, I don't want to still hear about it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, we're in that infancy where it's like a weekend. Like, we're all going to do our quick bits here, but I'm also sitting here saying, by the way, we need to stop talking about it as soon as possible, because the only way this is going to actually change is if we stop talking.
Yeah. I think the double-edged sword though of those review bombs and those talking about it being disastrous is that it works as a double edge. And I use the example of Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk, atrocious release, you know, whatever. People are, you know, completely against it, and rightfully so. The game wasn't amazing at launch, but like, now you have people who are going in and they're playing it and they're like, you know what? I heard it was the worst game ever, and there were redeeming parts of it. And I haven't played GTA the trilogy, so I can't speak to it. But by creating this narrative that it is atrocious and the worst game ever, you're then going to have a flip narrative that is eventually going to come to it when it goes on sale, and they're going to be like, "Hey, this game's actually pretty good." And like, I think that's a problem. Like, that's a double-edged sword of doing those review bombs. Is like, you're over inflating how bad it is, and then you're sort of taking away that narrative that the next time something like this happens, people are gonna be like, "Oh well, people said, you know, Cyberpunk was terrible. People said the trilogy was terrible, but I liked it, so maybe I need to, you know, give it a shot no matter what." And so I think, like, I don't know. For me, I've never seen the appeal of review bombs. But that's just myself.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I see like, and this goes way back to any conversation that we've had or I've had in any other instance about review scores. They're arbitrary. They don't actually matter in the end. It's more or less a gauge of you figuring out if you personally want to take a risk on something. I mean, look, even in the case of GTA Remaster, you know, if you really love it that much, you'll probably be able to look past it, or at the very least, if you wait a couple of weeks for them to patch out little things like, I don't know, the fucking rain that makes it impossible to see where you're going. Like, there are instances where you could still spend your money and you probably be okay with it. Because, I mean, if you're a big enough fan, excuse me, if you're a big enough fan, you're going to be fine. And I think that's what a lot of people were with, like you said, with Cyberpunk, where, you know, once a couple of things got patched out so it wasn't crashing all the time and it wasn't super buggy, I think people were willing to look past it because their excitement still existed. They still probably got what they wanted out of it. And who knows, like, I might be that person when the next-gen console version comes out, get a chance to really take a crack at it. Maybe I end up sitting there being like, you know what, this game actually was really good. You know, it's a shame that I had to wait this long, but I got to do it. You know, and you're in the case of, well, I got to play it while it was still somewhat in its transition period, but I still enjoyed it a lot, and that's fine. It's just, you know, when it's clearly obvious in the case of, say, both Cyberpunk and GTA that they were rushed out the door and should not have been put in launch period, like, you have to call that out, and you have to make these companies accountable. And like I said, either by not buying or by not talking. And we are already doing one of them by not buying with GTA Remaster, because I don't think either of us plan on getting it. I don't know if I really would have gotten it to begin with.
Stand strong, brother.
At least not anytime soon. But, like, I don't know. Like, once we get past this episode, unless something significant happens now, there's no reason to talk about the game anymore. Like, that's what I mean when I say stop talking. Like, once you've had your one shot in, stop. Because what are you going to say now? That it's still garbage? We did that with Cyberpunk as a joke. But that's because we wanted it to be good. We already know that 3, 4, and 5, if you want to think of what... I know it's technically 3 Vice City and San Andreas, but let's be real. It was 3, 4, and 5, but numbering systems in video games are always weird. But, like, we already know that they were good. It was just a garbage port. So what are you going to say? That hopefully the port's better? Like, no, I'll just go back and play the originals that are sitting on my shelf right now with my PlayStation 2. It's fine. If I really need to badly play it, I have an option.
Yeah.